So PBIS, we are going to start with the basics. What does it mean? What does it stand for? So PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. And really, it is a positive approach to behavioral intervention. We're going to talk about what that means, but in a nutshell, it is focusing on what kids can do and not what they can't do. Okay, it's really setting rules and expectations, and then reinforcing the kids for meeting those rules and expectations. Oh, sorry, I might mute you. There we go. I'm going to try to mute. If you can't mute yourself, I will mute you when you're coming in, just so that there's no background noise. Okay, so positive behavior interventions and supports. We implemented at Easter Seals in all our Easter Seals classrooms at the program-wide level. PBIS is also used very commonly for school-age children. So if you have other kids in elementary school, you may have heard of this as well. So implementing PBIS at the preschool level is not necessarily common. We are one of the few specialized preschool programs that utilize PBIS, and I'm very proud of our staff for doing so. So I'm just gonna hide my video panel. There you go. Hopefully you guys can see my screen better. So why do we do PBIS in preschool? So we really want children to be successful. And the way that we do that is creating an environment where every child feels good about coming to school. Okay, we want them to want to come into school and see their friends and see their teacher. We want to create an environment that promotes engagement. We're going to talk a lot about that today. What is engagement and what does that look like for young kids? And like I said before, we're really going to focus on teaching kids what to do, right? So teaching them rules and expectations, the routines, teaching skills that children can use in place of challenging behavior and not focusing on that behavior themselves. So what exactly is PBIS in preschool? Okay, so I'm going to go through some common components of PBIS within the preschool setting. The first one is expectations. So at Easter Seals, Delaware County, our expectations are be safe, be kind, have fun. Now, those expectations are kind of like the values that we want to teach our kids in program. We also have common positive language. Our directions are common. So and I'll show you guys the behavior matrix later that shows you all of that. But if our teacher uses the phrase walking feet, right? So will our therapist, so will admin, right? So we all use the same language and directional phrases for our kids to help teach them what those expectations and rules are. So examples are walking feet, quiet voice, hands to self. We focus on social and emotional skills and development. We focus on professional development and supporting staff, right? Our staff has initial and ongoing training on the strategies within PBIS. We also focus on family engagement, right? Which these groups are part of that. We also are starting this year, at least for Easter Seals, we are starting to have more in-person family events at programs. So having this nice balance of family events, family training, and really engagement within our school. And then we have teams in our school as well. We have core leadership teams and coaching teams, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them. So this is a picture of our PBIS core leadership team from 2020. This is not a current picture, but the core leadership teams are made up of teachers and therapists and teaching assistants and admin and behavior support staff that come together that talk about how can we better support our families, our staff, and our kids. And we meet once a month to do that. Now, if you're a parent, of an Easter Seals child and you have interest in joining our core leadership team, we would welcome you. We would love any sort of parent participation in these team meetings. And you could participate virtually if you weren't able to get here in person. So let me know if you have interest in that. Like I said, after the presentation or training today, I will send you out an email with the slides that include my contact information. All right, so we are going to start now about talking about relationships, okay? So here is a quote from Yuri Bronfenbrenner, and it says, every child needs one person who is crazy about it. So I want you guys all to think about yourself as a child, and who is that person? Who was the person in your life that was nurturing, right? That was a safe space for you, that just made you feel so special, that you could go to and you didn't feel judged by, right? For me, it was my grandmother, right? Like, she passed away almost 20 years ago now. But she, like, I would still sit on her lap, like, up until I was a teenager in my 20s, right? She was a safe space for me. I could talk with her about anything I wanted to. She would give me advice, but wouldn't be judgmental. So that was my person. So think about who your person was, okay? And think about the qualities that that relationship had. Now, what we need to try to do is replicate those relationships, right? And, you know, as a parent, right? Obviously you love your child, right? You love them dearly. But sometimes the relationships can be difficult. So we're going to talk about some strategies for kind of rebuilding, reestablishing some more positivity within those relationships if they aren't there already. So here's what we're going to here's how we're going to do that. We're going to talk about the 5-to-1 ratio. So the 5-to-1 ratio is a ratio of positive to negative interactions, okay? So you want to have, for every one negative interaction, you want to have 5 positive interactions, okay? Now, for some, that might be like a really daunting task, especially if you have to redirect or correct your child multiple times throughout the day, right? So we don't want to think about it that way. What we want to think about is just constantly filling our kids' banks. Okay, and this is what we do this during, talk about this during staff training, because it's what we do at school as well. Okay, we're constantly making deposits, right? We're having positive interactions throughout the day, so that when we have to make a withdrawal or when we have to redirect or correct, right, their bank is not empty. Right? So what are some examples of filling a kid's bank? It can be so simple. For moms and dads and family members, it might just be giving them a hug, a smile, a thumbs up, right? It might be playing with them, giving them 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes of your time just to play, right? To follow their lead. It might be saying, oh, you look so cute today in that outfit, right? So you're constantly filling the kiddos' piggy banks, right? Because if we don't do that, right, if we're not storing up these positive interactions, and we're only redirecting or correcting, right, the piggy bank is empty. And that's when we can see, you know, a child who is maybe tantruming a lot, right? They might feel burnt out. And you're like, well, how does a kid feel burnt out? Well, let's reframe this. Let's talk about us, right? Let's talk about the parent's perspective. We also have these piggy banks, right? So we need to fill our banks as well with positive interactions. How do we do that? Okay, so connection, right? Connection with maybe our spouses or connection with our kids, definitely fill our banks. But as you get older, you have to think about things that really do fill you, right? So things you like to do, things that help give you some peace and mental clarity, right? So like I love yoga. Like if I could just do yoga more regularly, right? I think I'd be a much more centered person, right? But yoga fills my bank, okay? Being outside fills my bank, right? Having dinner with a good friend fills my bank, right? So us as adults, as parents and caretakers, we have to fill our banks too, right? Because we also get withdrawals, right? Probably more than we would like to talk about. But like simple things like I had to put gas in my car this morning, right? Like turning my car on and the gas light being on. That's like a withdrawal, right? Having to stop, now I'm late, another withdrawal, right? Baby fell asleep in the car, withdrawal, you know? So we have to fill our banks so that we don't get burnt out. The same theory goes for us as it goes for the kids. And I do want to tell you a little bit about where this 5-to-1 ratio came from. It actually came from marriage and family research. You might have heard of John Gottman. He did a study on married couples and he like recorded the ratio, so how many positive to negative interactions, and he got to a point where within his ratio he could determine which couples would end up divorcing like 5 years, 10 years down the line. And he did it I think the percent of accuracy was pretty high. It was like with like 95% accuracy, he could tell what couples would stay together. And the ratio for stable, happy couples was 5-to-1. The ratio for couples that were headed for divorce was 0.8-to-1. So they actually had more negative interactions than positive interactions. So fill your kids' piggy banks, fill your own piggy banks, right? It's really important. Positive interactions and connections are what helps to rewire our brains, our bodies, right? So really try to make that focus for yourself and for your children. So some simple ways to give encouragement, okay? These things fill our kiddos' banks. It can be simple as a thank you. Oh, thank you for picking up your toys. Or what a good problem solver. You were able to do that puzzle. Or it's so much fun to play with you. You are so good at taking turns. Or that was really kind when you shared your toy with your brother or sister. Or thank you for using your inside voice when your sister was sleeping. Okay, so finding ways to encourage young kids will fill their banks. So how to make this connection at home. Some positive parenting tips. I have these slides kind of throughout our presentation. Just try to refill your child's piggy banks and your own. Don't forget about your own piggy bank. But use positive comments and encouragement. Have fun together. You know, sometimes I know for me, you know, I get home from work and it's like, I just feel like I just have like the list of things I need to do, right? Whereas like I come home, I start cooking dinner, you know, you clean up after dinner, then it's like bath time, nighttime routine, bedtime, getting ready for the next day. It's so much stuff sometimes. So make a little bit of time, right, to have a connection with your kids each day. Have fun, read a book, you know, just snuggle up with them before bed and, you know, tell them, you know, how much you miss them that day and give them some positive feedback, right? Just making a habit of doing things like that can really make a difference. So we're going to talk a little bit now about the power of play and following your child's lead. Now, this still can go along with that 5-to-1 ratio, okay? Because when we're following our kids' lead and not placing demands, we're filling their banks, right? So how to do this, okay? Tip 1, wait and watch, okay? So just kind of see what your kid's playing with, like see if they're doing some pretend play, if they're playing with specific toys. Just kind of sit back and watch, okay? And then join. Now, you can talk about what your kid is doing, okay? Instead of like directing their play. So an example of this is like, my son used to play with dinosaurs like all the time, right? So he would be sitting there playing and I'm like, oh, look at that dinosaur. That's really cool, right? And I would take my own dinosaur, right? And I'd be like, oh, this is the T-Rex. Like I'm talking and narrating play and engaging with him, right? While he's playing. Encourage their creativity. If they're playing with a toy in an unusual way, if you're just focusing on observing and watching and following their lead and filling their banks, this is not the time to kind of correct their play, right? Just observe and see how they're playing with. Watch for cues, right? If you start to come in their play and they're like backing up, right? Give them some space. And maybe you're just going to observe for the day, right? You want to try to avoid power struggles. So what is a power struggle? A power struggle is when we tell them to do something and they flat out refuse. And it's this back and forth, right? You want to try to avoid that. I'm going to talk about some strategies to avoid that in a moment. But when you're just trying to follow their lead in play, the biggest tip in avoiding power struggles is don't try to give them directions, right? You're just gonna follow their lead. And if they're just lining cars up, then guess what? You can have your own set of cars and you can be modeling like, oh, vroom, vroom, this car is going fast, right? You don't have to give them a direction for what they're doing. You can be with them, engage, and you can talk about the play scheme without giving them a demand and creating a power struggle. Because if your child is lining up toys, for an example, and you go ahead and take one out, that might cause a power struggle. And then guess what? Then that's a withdrawal of their piggy bank. That's not a deposit. Okay. And what we're talking about right here is trying to create a positive environment and relationship. There are times for teaching appropriate play. And we work on a lot of that at school. So at home, you want to just try to avoid the power struggles. You can model what that play looks like, but try to avoid the back and forth power struggle, because then it can escalate and you've lost your opportunity to engage with them during play, right? And have fun, right? Have fun, be silly, right? Young kids really respond to that, and they'll know, like they can tell if you're like, being silly and having fun and you're just like not really wanting to engage with them. If you're not feeling it, don't do it, right? If you're like, yeah, I just have too much on my mind, or I can't like stop what I'm doing to play, then just don't let them play on their own for the day. It's okay, right? We talk a lot. We've been talking a lot this year during our staff professional development about co-regulation. And part of that is like kids react to our behavior, right? So if we are unregulated, we're feeling stressed or anxious, and then we're trying to engage with them, it might not be effective. So if that's how you're feeling, and we'll talk about this later as well, fill your bag first, right? Whatever that means. If you need to go outside, take some deep breaths, sometimes I'll just like go in my bedroom and like just chill for like 5 minutes, gotta like compose myself, come back out. Do that first rather than trying to focus on this if you're not in a good regulated state. So like I told you, I'm a behavior analyst, and I love to listen to the research, right? What are evidence-based practices that work? What does research tell us? And research does tell us that kids are less likely to engage in problem behavior when they know what to do how to do it, and what is expected. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about setting rules and expectations. So I kind of talked about this a little bit already, but we want to encourage positive behavior by telling kids what to do instead, by using positive language. So I'm going to give you some examples. Okay, we want to try to avoid the no's, stops, and don'ts. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, it is very important, right, to teach a kid stop and go, right? In an emergency, you want to be able to call out stop, right? And your child stop. Okay. So playing stop and go games is one way to teach that stop and go. But we don't want to be saying stop, stop, stop all day, right? Because then it loses its ability to be effective, right? So we want to reserve those for emergencies, for when we need them, right? You don't want to be saying no, stop, don't all throughout the day. You want to reserve them for those times when it's a safety concern, okay? Instead, we should be telling kids what to do, okay? So here are some examples. So instead of saying no running, you can say use your walking feet. Instead of saying stop yelling, oh, let's use an inside voice. I've been doing that a lot. My daughter is 3, like I said, and she's a screamer. My son was not a screamer. So it is challenging when she is yelling and using like a loud voice. So we've been really working on an inside voice versus an outside voice, right? Instead of saying no hitting, right? You can say, oh, we're going to keep our hands to ourselves, okay? Instead of saying no crying, we can, well, first of all, if a kid is crying, you can console them, obviously. But you can also say, if they have vocal language, like, tell me, like, what's the matter? Or you can say, show me, right? A lot of kids say, like, well, show me what you want, show me what you need. They will lead you to what they need. Or if they have language, you can say, oh, use your words, you know, tell mommy, tell daddy, tell grandma, you know, teacher what you need, okay? Oh, that's okay. A question came in, and I'm going to address really quick. And there are no silly questions. When do we use walking feet? Interesting. We use the term walking feet in our hallways a lot, right? We would prefer the kids not run in the hallways, just for safety. So we'll say, like, an example is if they're like waiting at the door. All right, friends, we're gonna walk outside. You're gonna keep your eyes forward and we're gonna use our walking feet, right? So it just means that it's an alternative to saying don't run in the hallway, right? But we also have kids that skip in the hallway, right? That like do other things. So it's not always appropriate to use it, but it's an alternative to saying don't run. So I hope that clarifies a little bit. Good question. So tips to make your expectations clear. Okay, so we've said this already. Tell your kid what to do instead of what not to do. And an example of that is like, instead of saying like, now remember, you know, don't climb on the sofa, which my kids, honestly, they climb on the sofa. It's like one of my like pet peeves, but I tell them what to do. So I say, sofas are for sitting. We sit on the sofa, we put our butts on the sofa, right? So I tell them what to do instead of what not to do. And then I state that very clearly. And you can use age-appropriate language and expectations, right? So depending on the age of your kid, your rules and expectations might look a little different. Just make sure the language that you're using is clear for your kids. Oops, sorry. Hit the wrong button there. Okay. Know what is reasonable. Okay. It is important to know your child's abilities and limitations. And this goes for everyone, whether your child has any sort of special needs or disability, every child, every person has abilities and limitations, right? So it's just kind of like understanding where those thresholds are for your child. Expecting too much or too little can lead to frustration, right? keep your expectations realistic. Now, here's an example that I'll give you. So my basement is kind of like a playroom-ish for my kids. And sometimes they trash it, right? Like the whole basement. I'm like, ugh. And my husband's like, all right, you guys have to clean the basement, right? And like being realistic, they cannot clean the basement on their own. Like it's not gonna happen. So what's more realistic, right? Like I will split up the tasks. Like my daughter's name is Gabby for Gabby. Like you clean up the stuffed animals, and my son's Joey. Like you put your superheroes back in your bins, right? Be specific, right? Know their abilities and give them expectations that are realistic. And you can help too. Like I'll go down there, like my son, like if I just say, even though he's 8, I'll be like, hey, go clean up your superheroes. And he might go downstairs and then get distracted and start playing, right? So I know like an adult has to be down there to keep him on task, right? So kind of know that too about your kid. That falls into their abilities and limitations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. If you're an Easter Seals parent, you should have gotten one of these. If you did not, let your teacher know. We can send you one home. This is an example of a behavior matrix that we use in our building. So our expectations, like I said before, are be safe, be kind, have fun. And that first column down on your left are all the different common areas of our building. And then underneath the expectations are those specific rules, the language that are associated with the expectations in those common areas, right? So an example is like, how do we be safe in the playground? We wear helmets, we slide on our bottom. Oh, does someone have a question?
Well, excuse me for interrupting. I just joined in. This is Mr. Hawkins.
Hi.
Yeah, I was trying to join in like kind of early, but I'm at work. I don't know if you can see. Like I'm on the road driving a tractor trailer, so it was kind of hard to pull over. And I'm upstate New York.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll be on for about another half an hour if you're able to stay on. If not, I will send the recordings out as well. Okay.
Okay, I was trying, but like I said, it's raining up here in New York.
Yeah,
I'm in a place called Armont. You know, it's kind of high up.
Okay.
So yeah, but I'm at my delivery, so this is why I'm on the phone now, because they're unloading the truck.
Okay, that's fine.
Forgive me, everyone, for interrupting, and Miss Danielle, forgive me for being tardy. I was doing the best I could to make the group, and again, I apologize to everyone.
All right, no worries. We're glad you're here.
All right.
I am gonna mute your mic just so we can move on. If you need to unmute, please go ahead and do so. So yeah, so the expectations and the rules, we want to align with those common areas, right? So like I said, on the playground, it might be we're wearing helmets, we're sitting on our bottoms, we're waiting behind the line at the swings. We have a red line at our playground in media, and the kids wait behind it so they stay safe. So there are examples of that common language, positively phrased rules for our kids. We also have pictures, we're going to talk about that in a moment, to support teaching the rules in these common areas. Okay, so here are some examples for rules at home. Now, some of you might already have rules at home. If you don't, I think it's nice to just have some common rules and expectations. So examples might be clean up after yourself, use an inside voice, ask before you do something that isn't yours, use words to solve problems. Again, depending on the age of your kids, your rules might look different, right? You might have visuals for rules. They might be really simple, like follow directions, take turns, clean up your toys, ask for help, use your listening ears, calm body. Okay, these are just different examples of rules you can have at home. And they doesn't have to be a formal thing, you guys. But what it should be is consistent, right? So you're gonna use the same language, right? And I do this with my kids, like, all right, remember, we're using our listening ears. Like, do you hear what I'm saying? Right? If your kids have vocal language, you can have them repeat back like a direction, right? But using common language and phrases for your rules will help your kids to understand those rules and expectations, okay? And then when they meet your expectations and rules, we're going to be sure to praise them. Like, oh, I love how you used your listening ears and you cleaned up your toys for mommy. Thank you, right? Because then that fills their banks and they get that positive feedback for following the rules. That is just going to reinforce them learning and meeting your expectations. Pictures. So pictures and visual supports are really important. We use a lot of visual supports within our Easter Seals programs and for just young kids in general. So it doesn't have to be elaborate, okay? You can get your phone. Okay, I've done this before. You can snap a picture, right? And then show them, like, here is a picture of that kid right there. Like the example, the rule for this would be like, we throw away our paper towel after we wash our hands, right? So you take a picture, right? And then you show it to them. Like, oh, remember, after we wash our hands, we're gonna put our paper towel in the trash can, right? You can post it if you want to print it. You can just keep them on your phone, right? But you're going to model it, right? So it means you're going to show them, like, watch mommy, I'm putting my towel in the trash can. Okay. You're going to have them practice, and then you're going to notice when they do it, like I just said, and then you're going to praise it. Oh, good job throwing that in the trash, right? So pictures are a great way, especially kids love looking at pictures of themselves. So it is a great tool to teach rules and expectations. So just to kind of reinforce what we just talked about, show and tell, right? So that means you can tell them the rule, time to clean up, show them, look, mommy is helping, I'm putting the toy in the toy box, okay? Or you might show them with a picture. Look, remember, we put toys in the toy box, okay? And then practice. Give them opportunities to clean up. And then praise them, even if they clean up like literally like one or two things. I love how you're helping mommy clean up. Thank you so much, right? And it's just this process. Show and tell, practice, and then like reinforce them or praise them. Okay. Okay. Establishing a routine. I'm just checking for chats, nothing. Another piece of setting rules and expectations are establishing routines. Okay. So there are some common times of the day where there are routines that happen every single day, right? Like your morning routine, brushing teeth, even toileting routines, okay? Sometimes having visuals for those routines can be really helpful. I have to tell you, in every bathroom in our program at Easter Seals, we have a visual schedule for washing hands and for going on the potty, right? So here are some examples. Now, everyone's morning looks different, obviously, but it might be we get up, we go on the toilet, we have breakfast, we take meds, we brush our teeth and our hair, and we get dressed, right? So sometimes having those visuals to teach the steps in the routine can be really helpful. Using a visual sometimes make it less demanding. It's less about what the adult is telling the child to do, but it's more about, oh, this is what we have to do this morning, right? So it takes some of that off of the adult, all right? And it's consistent, right? The steps in the routine aren't going to change. Same for brushing teeth, okay? This is a little blurry, but you put water on the toothbrush, put the toothpaste on, you brush your teeth, you spit, rinse your toothbrush off. Now, obviously, there might be different steps, but these are just good examples to show how to establish those routines. And I have to say, I'm not promoting any of them specifically, but there are apps for visual schedules, okay? Some of them are free. Excuse me, some of them cost money. I would say try not to pay money for apps. I said you can do this on your phone if you need to take real life pictures. Or if you want help creating a visual schedule and your kid is in an Easter Seals program or they get any sort of supports, please reach out to their teachers or therapists and we can help create a visual schedule for home for you. Another good example of this is I worked with a young child who was splitting time between mom and dad, super common, right? The kid never knew what to expect. So he had like a calendar of the month. You could even do it for the week. And it was like, okay, whose house are they going to today? It was just a picture of mommy or daddy. Okay. So the more that we can teach and tell kids what to expect, like that quote said, the less challenging it's going to be for them to engage in those activities, right? I put another note here as well that timers are another really good tool to help kids transition maybe from one step to the next, right? I know, like, I mean, I'm not promoting this, but my kids like have their like tablets when they eat breakfast. So sometimes breakfast can take too long. So I'm like, okay, 5 more minutes and breakfast and screens are all done, right? So I'm going to set a timer and then we're going to move on to the next step in our routine. We use timers in our Easter Seals classrooms all the time, probably for almost every transition. Again, it's a nice way to take the demand off of the teacher. Sometimes we have songs to help kids transition. We'll flick the lights on and off. We'll have like a phrase we say. One of our classrooms go, stop, look, and listen, right? Like it's creating a routine and an expectation around the steps in those routines. Okay. Choices. So choices are one of the best strategies that an adult can use when giving a kid a direction. Again, I said this like 3 times now. It makes the request less demanding, right? Kids want to feel like they have some control, right? So we can provide a controlled choice, like we're picking the options, but they feel like they also have a choice, right? So things like getting dressed, taking a bath, dinner, playing outside, putting on a show, going in the car, cleaning up toys, going to bed, snack time, playing, reading a story. In all of those routines, could you offer a choice, right? So we're going to give you some examples. So your choices are going to be limited and reasonable. You pick it, right? So I don't know, this is a little much for me, but if you have them on hand, French fries, mashed potatoes, or tater tots, I would maybe give 2, French fries or tater tots, okay? Getting dressed. For me, with my daughter, I always pick out options for her. Do you want to wear jeans or the pink shirt? Great. She picks the one. And then I give her 2 options of a shirt. Great. Do you want the Moana shirt or the Peppa Pig shirt? Right. So constant choices make them feel like they're in control, that they have a say in what's going on. Right. Sitting is a challenge for some young kids. So maybe at home, it's like, hey, we're going to play a game. Do you want to sit on the couch or on a beanbag? At school, we have, flexible seating for circle time. Do you want to, we have like, I don't know, things we call cube chairs. This is what they're called. They look like cubes. But do you want to sit in the cube chair or the rocking chair, right? Either way, they're sitting for a circle, but we're giving them choices, right? So that they can pick where they want to sit. Maybe we're doing playtime. Do you want to play Legos or puzzles, right? You can, whatever you're doing, going back to that other list, you can always find a way to provide a choice. Now, I'm going to give you a trick that we use at school. Don't ever ask like a yes, no question if it's not an option, right? So like, if it's time to go to bed, don't say, are you ready to go to bed? Right? Because they're going to say no, right? If they don't want to. You can say, oh, it's time for bed. Should we read a story or do a calm down activity first, right? So that it's time for, we use a lot at school, it's time to get dressed, right? It's time to take a bath. Do you want to play with rubber duckies or bath crayons, right? So it's not saying, do you want to do the activity? It's saying it's time for the activity, but then providing a choice. Dinner, right? Meal times can be a struggle. I feel you. So I started making a choice of vegetables, right? They have to eat a vegetable, right? Do you want broccoli or green beans? Or sometimes I'll have three because I'll have like hard carrots. I'll cook two, I'll have one. Like carrots, broccoli, or green beans. You guys pick one, right? So whatever it is that you're engaging in, whatever activity or routine, try to offer a choice. Now, are they always going to be able to choose? Do they always choose one? No, but a lot of the time it will work. Good question. Someone put a question in the chat box about for the days where the child knows the routine, okay, but they don't want to participate in the routine, right? So we all have days. Trust me, everybody has days. And we have to be flexible and the kids have to be flexible. So I would say going back to the routines, like it depends like what, let's say they're getting stuck in a part of your routine, right? Let's say like they just don't want to brush their hair, right? Like they're not doing it. My daughter doesn't like brushing her hair. So we'll skip a step, right? We're like, all right, moving on, let's get dressed, let's get your shoes on. And then maybe I'll try to represent the task differently. So get dressed, get shoes on. All right, do you want mommy to put your hair in pigtails or one ponytail? Right, so try to circle back to the step and provide a choice. That's one option. Now, are there some days where like she's just going to her grandma's house and we don't brush her hair? Yes. Right? So it's like pick your battles also. You know, like if it's not a necessary step, some days we're just moving on, right? And then we'll try again the next day or the next time the routine comes up. I just think it's really important to not get in those power struggles, right? If we can avoid the power struggle, we can move past it. That's gonna be better for everybody involved. Now, there are gonna be times where like you can't skip a step, like changing a dirty diaper. My daughter is still in potty trained, she's 3. We'll be having a training on that coming up soon. Yeah, like we have to change a dirty diaper. We're not going to get around that, right? We can't, skip that step. So then it becomes, how do I make this a more desirable activity for her? Like, okay, we're going to change a diaper. Do you want to hold a toy, right? Do you want to hold a book or a baby doll? Or we're going to talk about first ends, right? So it could be first we change your diaper, then you can have a yogurt pop, okay? If that's an acceptable reward afterwards, right? First end statements, good segue. This is research-based strategy that says that kids are more likely to do a non-preferred task if they know it's followed by something preferred, okay? So here are some examples. First, put on your shoes, then go outside. Some of these go very nicely together because that's part of the routine, right? So first shoes, then outside. First, pick up your toys, then you can have a snack. First, get dressed, then we can play outside. Okay, so consistently using this language can be really helpful to get young kids to engage in tasks that are just non-preferred. We use visual first then boards a lot at school. Again, if you want us to make something for you at home, we could definitely do that. It just says first and then we have pictures of the activities. So this example here would be the kid doesn't really like the magnetic numbers, but loves the ball bounce, right? So first we're going to play with our numbers, then we'll play with the ball bounce, okay? Also, if you don't have a first ed board, you don't have visuals at home, you can use the actual objects too. Like an example would be like, first, we're going to get your diaper change, show a diaper, and then we can go on your tablet, show them the actual tablet, right? So you can use actual objects if you don't have pictures available as well. So we're circling back to positive reinforcement. It is an essential part of positive behavior support. We have to be able to catch kids being good and praise them and reinforce them for being good, right? So being specific, like this little girl here, oh, I love how you're being so careful. You kept all the pieces on the table. Good job, right? It's important to note that some kids don't love the verbal praise. They just don't. And I've heard from families and even staff, like reinforcement doesn't work for them. Well, reinforcement is a principle that applies to everyone and everything. Things that we get things that we get a desirable outcome for, we keep doing. Things that don't have a desirable outcome, we don't keep doing, right? So kids that don't like the verbal praise, right? That's not reinforcing for them. They don't want you to say, good job doing that, right? Some kids want to be left alone, right? And that is their reinforcement. So kiddo is doing a task, cleaning up, and then they want to go do what they want to do, right? Some kids have external reinforcements, right? Some kids you might have to use like a little snack, like for potty training. First, go potty, then you can get an M&M, right? The verbal praise is not always enough to reinforce the behavior. So sometimes you have to find other things that are reinforcing for your child. So I love this slide. How do we do it all? How could we do it, right? And the answer is you can't. You can't do it all, okay? I love this slide here because these are strategies for us. Because like I said earlier, we have to be regulated as parents, as caregivers, in order to effectively interact positively with our kids, right? So what can you do, okay? Take a deep breath. If your kid is triggering you or making you upset, take a deep breath. Let's take 3. Whatever you can do, breathing will actually calm those physical symptoms of stress in your body, right? Sometimes we get panicky. We might get in fight or flight mode, right? Which really has physical effects on our body, our mind. So taking those deep breaths can sometimes just reset us a little bit. You can repeat a positive affirmation. I like this one. I have patience, right? I can do this, right? And then you can acknowledge your child's feelings, right? Even if, they were crying and screaming because you told them to clean up. You can say, I see that you're really upset. I'm sorry you feel that way, right? And then maybe you can start cleaning up on your own, and maybe they'll start cleaning up something, right? And then look for an opportunity to praise them and celebrate their behavior. Reflect. How do you want to respond if this behavior happens again? What were they trying to communicate, and what might they have been feeling, right? In the situation with cleaning up, you can reflect. Well, they weren't ready to clean up. Maybe next time I'll use a timer, right? Maybe next time I'll have something fun planned right after cleanup. Maybe I'll show them what we're having for dinner. Like, look, we're gonna have mac and cheese, your favorite. Clean up, then we'll have mac and cheese, right? So sometimes in the moment, you gotta let it go, right? Because it's stressful and it creates a power struggle. But you can reflect and say, next time, I'll do this a little differently, right? And then think about something that you love about your child, right? and then count to 10, right? So stay calm, connect, and reflect. It's like this cycle. But again, regulating ourselves, filling our own tanks are really, really important. So do one thing at a time. Okay, that's my suggestion. I am going to, I'll show you, I'm going to come back to the question. So here are some resources for you. National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations has a ton of wonderful resources. I'll share the slides with you afterwards. Here are some also some links for STEM boards and visual schedules if you want to create some at home. Again, ask your child's teacher or therapist if you have them for resources we can also print for you. I'm going to stop